The year 2025 has brought unexpected challenges to the historic routes connecting the United States to Alaska through Canadian territory. Recent announcements from Canadian authorities have signaled a significant tightening of access, creating new hurdles for travel and commerce. These measures, citing border management, trade disputes, and environmental emergencies, strain the notion of an open path to Alaska. The Canadian government emphasizes stricter enforcement of border protocols, impacting both individual travelers and commercial operators. This has immediate consequences for Alaskans who rely on these routes for essential goods and travel, as well as for tourists. Lingering trade tensions and Canada's domestic priorities, including natural resource management, contribute to the restrictions. Specific measures vary, from closures of informal crossing points to potential new fees and regulations. For many, the idea of Canada impeding access to Alaska feels like a sudden shift in a historically amicable relationship. The Alaska Highway, a symbol of cooperation, now faces controlled and potentially costly access. The implications extend beyond inconvenience, touching upon economic stability, cultural exchange, and the U.S. Canada partnership. This evolving situation prompts a reevaluation of long-standing agreements and expectations between the two nations. Central to the discussion of restricted access is the fate of historic routes like the Chilkoot Trail. This famed 33-mile passage stretching from DA, Alaska, to Bennett, British Columbia, is steeped in the lore of the Klondike Gold Rush. After a 5-year closure due to flood damage, the Chilkoot Trail was slated for a celebrated reopening in 2025. Extensive maintenance work had been undertaken to restore its passability, attracting hiking enthusiasts and history buffs. However, U.S. Customs and Border Protection has stated that hikers will not be permitted to enter the United States from Canada via the Chilkoot Trail. The trail's terminus in DA, Alaska, is not a designated port of entry, effectively cutting the trail in half for those wishing to complete the traditional through hike. The Canada Border Services Agency is considering its stance on allowing hikers to enter Canada via the trail, adding to the uncertainty. This situation mirrors challenges faced by other long-distance trails that cross the U.S.-Canada border, altering the fundamental nature of these cross-border adventures. Angela Wetz, superintendent of the Klondike Gold Rush National Historic Park, confirmed the U.S. border restrictions, disappointing many. The recent tightening of border controls and restrictions on routes like the Chilkoot Trail are poised to impact local tourism significantly. For communities in Alaska and British Columbia, any impediment to visitor flow is a serious concern. The Chilkoot Trail is an economic engine for small businesses, from outfitters and guides to accommodation providers and local shops. Limiting the trail to a one-way journey diminishes its allure for many international trekkers, translating to lost revenue. The uncertainty surrounding the CBSA's decision on northbound crossings adds to the anxiety for businesses relying on a predictable tourist season. Beyond the Chilkoot, other access points crucial for Alaskan tourism and supply chains are also facing new scrutiny. Increased restrictions can deter casual tourists who might perceive travel to or through these regions as too complex. The allure of Alaska often involves the journey itself, with many visitors opting for road trips that traverse Canadian highways. If these journeys become more difficult or expensive, the overall appeal of Alaska as a destination could suffer. As if man-made restrictions were not enough, nature has also thrown a formidable obstacle in the path of travel to Alaska. In early 2025, a significant wildfire erupted near Summit Lake, British Columbia, directly impacting the Alaska Highway. This critical roadway was forced to close near Fort Nelson, BC, due to the blaze, creating hazardous conditions and severely disrupting traffic flow. The closure of the Alaska Highway isolates communities, delays essential supplies, and throws travel plans into disarray. The BC Wildfire Service has been working tirelessly to maintain some level of access, but the scale of the fire makes containment efforts incredibly difficult. This situation, combined with the new border restrictions, paints a challenging picture for anyone needing to travel to or from Alaska through Canada in the summer of 2025. British Columbia's Premier, David Eby, has proposed tolls on U.S. commercial trucks traveling through BC to Alaska. This move is a response to U.S. economic actions and aims to give BC leverage in trade disputes. The primary target is the Alaska Highway, crucial for freight heading north. EB's proposal follows U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. The tolls could increase costs for Alaskan consumers and businesses. This legislation is a defensive strategy ready to be enacted if necessary. EB's stance highlights Canadian provinces defending their economic interests. The current climate of restricted access and proposed tolls is influenced by former U.S. President Donald Trump's administration. His America First approach led to tariffs on goods from many countries, including Canada. Tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum sparked retaliatory measures and strained relations. British Columbia Premier David Eby linked his proposed toll legislation to Trump's past tariff threats. Even though Trump is not in office, his policies created a precedent and vigilance in Canada. The concern is that similar measures could be re-implemented by future U.S. administrations. Trump's commentary on Canada has been unconventional. Premier Eby accused Trump of harboring ambitions to annex Canada. This suspicion influences how Canadian officials perceive U.S. actions. The reaction to the current border situation is colored by these past experiences. Canadian officials may feel a greater need to assert their sovereignty and protect their economic interests. The Canadian federal government, led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has consistently advocated for a rules-based international trading system and has sought to de-escalate trade tensions with the United States. When faced with U.S. tariffs during the Trump administration, Trudeau's government responded with carefully calibrated retaliatory tariffs, while simultaneously working through diplomatic channels to find resolutions. In the current context of 2025, with new pressures on Alaska access routes, Ottawa's response is likely to be a blend of firmness on sovereignty and a continued willingness to negotiate. The federal government typically seeks a more measured approach, supporting the right of its agencies to manage border crossings according to Canadian law and national interest. The federal government also has to balance various interests, including the concerns of its own citizens and businesses in border regions, the integrity of its borders, and its international relationship with the United States. Prime Minister Trudeau has often criticized protectionist tactics, viewing them as detrimental in the long run. His government would likely prefer to resolve any disputes over access or trade through dialogue rather than escalating retaliatory measures. The challenge for Ottawa lies in navigating these issues in a way that protects Canadian interests without causing irreparable damage to the vital U.S. Canada relationship. The combined impact of new border restrictions, potential tolls, and natural disasters like wildfires creates a wave of economic uncertainty for local communities on both sides of the U.S.-Canada border. For Alaskan towns, especially those not easily accessible by sea or air, the Alaska Highway is an essential economic artery. Any disruption to its flow directly affects the price and availability of goods, impacting businesses and the daily lives of residents. In British Columbia and the Yukon, communities along these routes also have a vested interest in smooth transit. The prospect of reduced U.S. travel due to complex border rules or the deterrent of potential tolls on commercial vehicles could lead to a downturn in business. The agricultural and resource sectors could also feel the pinch, with increased transportation costs eroding profit margins. The interconnectedness of the regional economy means that a disruption in one area can have far-reaching consequences. The uncertainty itself is an economic impediment, deterring investment and slowing economic growth in regions already contending with the challenges of a northern climate and relative isolation. The events of 2025 surrounding access to Alaska through Canada highlight a growing complexity in the relationship between these two long-standing partners. The confluence of stricter border enforcement, proposed retaliatory trade measures like tolls, and the ever-present threat of natural disasters paints a challenging picture for the future of transit along this northern frontier. The broader implications extend beyond the immediate economic impact on local communities or the inconvenience for tourists. They touch upon the very nature of U.S.-Canada relations. While cooperation has historically been the hallmark of this partnership, recent trends suggest a path that could become more transactional and guarded. The need for robust dialogue and a commitment to finding mutually agreeable solutions is more critical than ever. Preserving the historical and cultural significance of these routes, while navigating modern geopolitical and environmental realities, will be a delicate balancing act. The U.S. path to Alaska is more than just a physical route, it is a symbol of a relationship, demanding foresight and diplomacy to navigate the fractured frontier.